6 in the morning is usually the quietest time on the ranch. That soft moment when the sun creeps over the trees and the world. Hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be yet. I stood by the fence, listening to the wind move through the grass, thinking about how fragile peace really is. This land wasn't just dirt and fence posts. It was purpose. It was protection. 5 years earlier, I bought this place for one reason: family. My younger brother needed space to breathe again. Out here, away from sirens and crowds, his nights were finally calm. The nightmares stopped. The panic eased. That peace didn't sit well with everyone. Across the road sat Willow Creek Estates, a polished HOA community, where every mailbox matched and every blade of grass answered to a rule book. From their side, my ranch wasn't a sanctuary. It was an inconvenience. At first, it was small things. Cars slowing down near the fence. People staring a little too long. Survey flags appearing and disappearing overnight. I told myself it was curiosity, that people from gated neighborhoods aren't used to seeing land they don't control. Then the complaints started. Anonymous calls about noise that never happened. Emails about property lines that hadn't moved in decades. Friendly warnings that development was coming whether I liked it or not. One name kept coming up: the HOA president, a woman known for running her community like a courtroom, where she was judge and jury. She never came herself at first. She sent letters, lawyers, neighbors doing her talking. Each message carried the same idea: this land would be better used by someone else. I watched from my side of the fence as people measured what they thought was already theirs. They saw acreage, opportunity, profit. They didn't see what it had already saved. What they didn't know was that I document everything, every visit, every step across that line, because some boundaries aren't suggestions. Standing there in the morning light, I knew something was coming. You don't poke at a place like this unless you plan to take it. And the people across that fence had no idea how prepared I was to defend it. I didn't buy this ranch as an investment. I bought it because doctors ran out of answers. My brother needed more than prescriptions and quiet rooms. He needed space, real space, the kind that lets your mind slow down because there's nothing chasing it. Out here, he found a rhythm again. Morning walks, feeding horses, simple routines that grounded him when memories tried to pull him back into places he didn't want to be. That's why the first fence break hit harder than it should have. I noticed it early one morning. Clean cuts, too clean to be an accident. Someone hadn't wandered through. They came prepared. I fixed it without making noise. New posts, tighter wire. I wanted to believe it was a one-time mistake. It wasn't. A few days later, my brother found another breach. This time he just stood there staring at it, hands shaking, watching the line that kept his world safe hanging open. That's when I stopped guessing. I installed cameras, small ones, quiet ones, the kind people never notice until it's too late. And the footage told a story I didn't want to hear. Late-night trespassing, engines revving, someone cutting across my pasture like the land already belonged to them. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was planning. I watched someone stop in the middle of my field and look around. Not lost, not confused. Studying. Across the fence, Willow Creek Estates stayed spotless. Their lawns trimmed. Their streets silent. While my land was being treated like a test site, I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Because emotion clouds judgment, and judgment decides outcomes. Instead, I documented every entry, every path taken, every moment someone crossed a line they didn't have permission to touch. The ranch stayed peaceful on the surface. Horses grazing, sunlight on grass. My brother walking a little steadier each day. But underneath that calm, something else was building. People don't keep coming back unless they believe resistance is temporary. And whoever was doing this believed I would eventually give up. They were wrong. They just hadn't learned it yet. The footage removed all doubt. This wasn't a neighbor taking a shortcut. This was deliberate. Every morning I reviewed the recordings, timestamps, angles, patterns. The same ATV appeared again and again. Same entry point. Same path through the pasture. Same pauses near the barn and water lines. Then came the survey stakes. Bright wood pushed into my soil like claims markers. Measuring tape stretched across grass my family depended on. Someone wasn't just trespassing. They were planning. I stood there in full daylight, looking at the marks left behind, and understood something important. People only measure land they think they're going to own. The calm didn't last long. A call came in later that morning. Someone had reported a disturbance on my road. A complaint about a man refusing to leave property that wasn't his. The officer who arrived recognized me immediately. We walked the fence together. I showed him the footage, the timestamps, the equipment. His reaction said everything. Across the fence, the story was different. A worried family, a desperate need for land, children who needed stability. That narrative traveled fast when repeated by people with influence. It sounded responsible, almost noble. But evidence doesn't care about intentions. It only cares about facts. Trespassing is trespassing, day or night, with excuses or without them. Surveying without permission is intent, and intent changes everything. I could have shut it down right there, filed reports, made arrests. Instead, I waited. Because when people think they're winning, they make mistakes, and the ones pushing hardest often leave the clearest trail behind them. The ranch stayed quiet on the surface, but the lines in the dirt told a different story. This wasn't going away. It was escalating. And whoever was behind it believed pressure would force surrender. They still didn't realize how carefully they were being watched. Every step they took across my land was bringing them closer to consequences they hadn't planned for. She didn't arrive quietly. Luxury tires crunching gravel announced her long before she spoke. A silver sedan out of place on a working ranch, polished enough to reflect the sky. She stepped out like she owned the ground beneath her heels. Straight posture, perfect hair, sunglasses hiding eyes that never blinked first. She looked past my brother on the porch, then back to me. The way people do when they're deciding what you're worth. She said my name like it was a formality, introduced herself like it was a title. Her voice was smooth, practiced, the kind that sounded reasonable even when it wasn't. She talked about confusion, about boundaries, about how her family needed this land. She never asked if it was for sale. She talked like the decision had already been made. I stood there in work clothes, dirt still on my hands, listening as she explained why my refusal was inconvenient, why my reasons didn't matter, why the future she imagined was more important than the life we were living. She offered money without saying a number. Generous, she called it. I said no. Clear. Final. That's when her tone shifted. The smile stayed, but the warmth left. She started talking about processes, courts, reviews, how difficult ownership could become. From the porch, my brother didn't say a word, but I could feel him watching. Every sentence tightening the air around us. She glanced at him once, dismissive, like he was a detail she hadn't bothered to consider. I told her again the property wasn't for sale. Not now, not ever. Her jaw tightened. The first crack in control. She reminded me that people who resist change often regret it, that families with influence don't lose. Then she turned and walked back to her car. No handshake. No goodbye. The engine started. Gravel shifted. And just like that, she was gone. But the message stayed behind. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a warning. I stood there for a long moment after the car disappeared, listening to the ranch settle back into its normal sounds. Wind, horses, the porch boards creaking as my brother shifted his weight. He asked if we were going to be okay. I told him yes, because threats only work when you don't understand the system being used against you. And by that afternoon, I understood it very well. They had chosen escalation, which meant the next move was already coming. The deputies arrived faster than I expected. Lights off, no sirens, just dust and quiet authority rolling up my driveway. I recognized one of them. He recognized me too. That brief pause where professionals realize the call doesn't match the man standing in front of them. I let them speak first. Because truth doesn't rush. They explained the complaint. Illegal occupation, threats, a frightened child. I nodded. Then I handed over my phone. 3 nights of footage. Time-stamped. Infrared clear. Trespass. Property damage. Surveying without consent. The room for interpretation vanished in seconds. One deputy exhaled slowly. The other shook his head. This changes things, he said. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there while the narrative collapsed under its own weight. They asked if I wanted to press charges. That was the moment I understood what power really looks like. Not anger. Not shouting. But the option to act and or wait. I said not yet. Instead, I asked them to document everything. Official report. Photos. Statements. Because people like this don't stop when they're embarrassed. They stop when the paper trail gets heavy enough to bury them. Before they left, one deputy looked back at my land. The fences, the animals, the quiet, "Keep those cameras running," he said. I promised I would. That night I slept lightly. Not afraid, alert. Because once someone tries to use the system as a weapon, they don't retreat. They reload. And sure enough, by Friday afternoon, the real play came. A certified letter. Legal language thick with intimidation. Claims of public access. Community necessity. Eminent domain. Floated like a threat disguised as policy. That's when I knew this wasn't about a shortcut, or housing, or misunderstanding. It was about control. They thought rural meant isolated. That quiet meant weak. That a rancher with dirt on his boots wouldn't know how to fight in court. They were wrong. Because I'd spent 2 decades watching people lose cases they should have won. Not because they were wrong, but because they were unprepared. So I prepared. By Sunday, my attorney had the footage. By Monday, the county had copies. By Tuesday, the HOA's story had more holes than my old fence ever did. And when the meeting finally came, the one they were so confident about, I walked in calm. Evidence organized. Timeline clear. They looked shocked. That's the moment bullies hate most. When the person they underestimated stands up informed. The land stayed ours. The threat stopped. And the cameras? They're still running. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's knowing you're ready when someone tries to take what's yours.